Hi guys, my name's Jack Nagel and I've been in recovery for over 10 years now and completely transformed my life out of addictive patterns. And with Real Drug Talk and our treatment company called Connection-Based Living, I've helped hundreds of other people completely change their life as well. Like Haley, who's over 6 years in recovery. You can check her story out on our YouTube channel. And James, who's over 2 years in recovery now, you can also check his story out on our YouTube channel. Because of the mad times that we live in, we have put together a book. It's called The 11 Definitive Steps to Transform Your Life Out of Addictive Patterns Without Having to Go to Rehab. You can find it by scrolling down in the description that I'm pointing at here. If you just scroll down and click that link, it'll take you to the special offer on the book. It's super cheap. And also you get some free bonuses along with it as well. So if you're looking to transform out of addictive patterns and get some change and, have things to be different and joyful and have some freedom in your life, I'd highly recommend taking a look at this book. It could be the most important thing you read in 2021 and 2022 moving forward. Into the video, guys. Peace. No, it's really interesting. And like I said off the top, that's why I'm so rapt to have guys like yourself, and we've spoken to like Alan Christensen as well, like people, because let's face it, footy is like revered in Australian culture, and I think to see some of these more challenging things to be spoken about more in a more normal fashion, and for people to change their perceptions, it's going to take brave people like yourself, like talking about this stuff and changing the way that people think about it. It's super interesting. So I want to circle back to some of the footy stuff if we can, because obviously people are always interested in that, and I selfishly am as well. But I just want to, because I've seen you come out and do some amazing stuff around the mental health, and they're linked, of course. But it was amazing when I went to the Rethink Addiction event the other night, about 3 weeks ago now, a couple of weeks ago, to kind of hear you talking about that side of things. Do you mind just sort of giving us the 3-minute snapshot of your mental health, drug and alcohol story?
So I mean, for me, my career spanned over 12 years. So I've spent a long time. Like the average AFL career is 4 years. So I've been experienced and been around long enough to sort of see a lot of different things. And I guess for the first sort of probably 7 and 8 years of my career, it was relatively smooth sailing in terms of, I never really experienced too many, hard times, where, I actually thought to myself, something's not right. I never had any of those moments throughout my first, as I said, 7 or 8 years of my career. And it wasn't really until, my dad passed away in 2018, where that's when things really started to go shit for me. And it was based around, not having any sort of coping skills or any sort of strategies, not having spoken to anyone through that challenging time. And, I resorted to some really destructive patterns. So I've always, as a 15-year-old, I started gambling. And I gambled pretty much through my whole career. I was someone that didn't really have too many hobbies outside of football. So that was always sort of like my release. And I never actually thought too much about, the fact that this could be a potential problem for me until I started using it more and more as an escape mechanism and trying to really distract myself from what was going on in my life, which is a lot of grief around, the most important person outside of, my kids and my wife in my life had just passed away. He was my best friend, and we did a lot of stuff together, and that was such a big, whilst he was sick, it was, very much hands on deck, trying to make sure that his life was quality, as much as we could anyway. And he lived with me for the last few months of his life. And so you're very much just on your toes, getting through, looking after him. At the time I had a wife that was heavily pregnant, and we already had a 1.5-year-old. So it was, it was quite a stressful sort of, situation, but you just do what you need to do. And it wasn't until he was gone where it really sort of hit me. And that's, as I said, I started using some things like gambling, Majority of the time was at the start was sort of gambling, just, you know, completely just taking my mind off it. I removed all emotion out of winning and losing. I had no emotion attached to it. So, you know, I could win $20,000 in one day and I couldn't give a shit. I could lose the same amount of money and I'd still feel the same. Like it was not about that. It was more about trying to give my brain something else to focus on rather than the pain I was feeling inside. And I guess that something like that has to come to an end because, you know, people start to find out and, you know, you can't cover your tracks for that long. So eventually, some people found out, my wife in particular, you know, stopped getting money. So like, you know, I was cut off to it. So it was like, and for me, I was sick of it. So I decided, and I haven't gambled since, you know, but I haven't gambled now for 2 years. So it's
amazing.
a long time since I've gambled. But once that stopped, I just replaced it with the drugs. So the drugs was like a relatively short addiction, but did so much more damage to me, you know, mentally, physically than the gambling did. Like it was such a bigger challenge to get off that than it was the gambling, because obviously I felt like, you know, the physical attachment to the drugs, you know, where obviously, you know, changes the physiology in your brain and like you just, you know, you've actually become physically dependent on that to actually get up and function day to day. And what I was doing, you know, I was a professional athlete. So God, it was like a full-time job in itself, trying to stay on top of, you know, my supply, getting, you know, enough for these drugs so I could get through the weeks. And just a massive draining process. And I guess that all came to an end when you know, I had not an attempt on my life, but I drove my car into a pole, and it was really around it was more around sort of I'd had enough of what I was doing, the patterns. I didn't want to die that day, but I just had enough of everything that was going on in my life, and I just sort of wanted something to give, like something to change. And I didn't, you know, you never think that you're ever going to do that at any stage in your life. You just don't think that you know, I used to hear about people committing suicide and, you know, harming themselves. And you always think to yourself, like, that's never going to be me. Like, no way. But, you know, when I was driving around that day in a Melbourne suburb that I've never been to in my life, and there's no reason for me to be there, it just goes to show that this can get anyone at any stage. So, as I said, from that moment on, I haven't taken a drug. So that was the last time I took drugs. And that was nearly a good year and a half ago now. So that was a brief sort of snapshot. But obviously lots of things in between there, but just to try and do an overview.
Just a quick interruption to let you guys know that we've created a complete new book called The 11 Definitive Steps to Get Recovery Without Going to Rehab. And for a short time only, we've got a super special deal on it where you can get the book for a heavily discounted price, plus some free bonuses, the book audio recorded, and a free self-care planner that I've used to help me start my day and finish my day in a really nice and freeing fashion. So if that's of interest to you and you're looking for some answers on how to get some transformation out of addiction without having to lock yourself away in rehab for ages, maybe you might want to check out the book. Search for it in the description below. Back to the video. Peace.
No, 100%. And then, like, so would you say, because I think this is the thing that people don't understand, you know, about addiction or drug use or whatever you want to call it, is that it's not really about, just like what you said, it's not really about the drugs. It's kind of about everything else that's going on under the surface. And the drugs is just the manifestation to kind of take you out of whatever's going on. Would you kind of agree with that?
I couldn't agree anymore. You know, look, I'm not, you know, I'm not sitting here saying before I was, you know, a recovering drug addict that I never had judgments of people that were addicts. Like, of course I did. You know, I used to think, you know, you drive, you know, down streets of, you know, some of the streets in Melbourne and you'd see junkies and you'd use that sort of language. And it's like now, you know, I want to get out of my car and help these people because there's other things going on in their life. Like, and this is the thing, I don't feel like anyone wakes up in the morning, rolls out of bed and goes, I want to be addicted today. Like, it just happens. Who in their right mind would want that in their life? There's generally other things that are going on in that person's life. And in my case, like, yeah, a lot of just uncovered stuff that, you know, with the right help, you know, was unpacked and came out that, you know, I just had to deal with, and I didn't want to deal with it at the time. And that was my way of trying to avoid it, was the gambling and drug use. And before you know it, you get yourself in a big hole that you can't get out of. And that's, you know, I don't know every single person's case around, you know, how they got into addiction, but I'd bloody be sure that there's something else going on in their life that's causing them to make these decisions. And it's really about trying to unpack that and trying to find out what it is, rather than judging them and saying that they'll never not be able to live without drugs or anything. Like, I think that's the worst thing people can do, is say that this person can't be fixed. I think everyone has it in them to be able to sort of turn their life around. It's just being able to see it. And sometimes that's the hardest thing when you are caught in addictions, being able to see that light at the end of the tunnel, because it's, you know, you do think you're doomed. You do think you've got this disease forever. And it's definitely not the case. It's very hard going early days, but it definitely can be done, and you can definitely get out and live a, you know, long and happy, healthy life.
Yeah, 100%. No, it's awesome to hear. Now, can I ask, like, what kind of drugs was it that you were using? Like uppers, downers?
No, I was definitely the downers. So I prescription drugs. So you know, any sort of painkiller, any benzo. So lots of just, you know, sleeping tablets, muscle relaxers, anything that was sort of going to make me relax and chill out, and think about life. That was what I was taking. I didn't want to take anything where I went out and partied and went on 3-day benders where I didn't sleep. Like, that just wasn't, I guess, what I was
after
wanting to feel. So I was definitely on the prescription drug side, and that presents like big challenges, because
100%
it's just hard to get. Like, you know, especially the drugs that I was taking, you know, they're monitored, and it's you know, gets to the point where it's your dependence and your tolerance levels are so high that you're literally needing a pack of the stuff every day to survive. So it's not sustainable, and that's where I can definitely see how people end up turning to the street drug heroin and fentanyl and these sorts of drugs, because easily accessible, cheaper, and you don't need as much. So that's generally where, like, I've done lots of research since, you know, having gone through what I've gone through, and you know, 90% of the people that have been on heroin are, you know, started in the cabinet, and it's so true. I actually, my wife asked me this the other night. She actually said, "Did you ever think about taking heroin?" I never did. I can honestly say I never did. I'm thankful that I never got to that point, because I feel like it'd be a much harder road back. But not to say that I wouldn't have been able to do it, but I just feel like it would have been a harder road back. So I'm just grateful that, you know, for me, I had some good people around me, and I knew within myself what was going on, and I knew that wasn't me. I knew that wasn't, you know, the person that I wanted to be. So that feeling in itself was eating away at me a lot. So that guilty shit feeling, like every time I went to bed, was just really sort of getting to me. And that's where sort of obviously things came to a really bad point when I decided to crash my car, is because that feeling, that overwhelming feeling of fuck, like, I just don't want to do this anymore, just really got the better of me. And I needed something to give. I needed something to change. And for whatever reason, I thought that was the best way to get something to change. I don't know why, but I just thought that was the right thing to do at the right time. And no one will ever be able to explain that other than me. So it was just something that I felt like I needed to do to get the right help that I needed. And thankfully, I've got a really good treatment plan. And, you know, like I said, I've had some good people around me, and, you know, life's been really good, you know, for the last 6 months, really.
Yeah. No, it's interesting what you say about, like, the car crash. That's actually not, you know, whether it's a car crash or something else, you know, someone, like a lot of people say, you know, purposefully kind of getting arrested, or, you know, having a blow up with like their missus or whatever it is, you know, like it's actually a pretty like common thing, you know, because that's sort of what happens in addiction is you get stuck and you just like, you kind of don't know, or it's hard to like express what's going on, even if you have good people around you. And yeah, it's a pretty common way.
Hope you enjoyed that video, and thanks for supporting the Real Drug Talk YouTube channel. Every video you watch, comment, subscribe to helps us to push through the YouTube algorithms and hopefully reach more people and help them out. Now listen, we're living in the most crazy times for the past 100 years, and because of that, as I mentioned throughout this video, we've created a brand new ebook that we have a special deal on called the 11 Definitive Steps to Transforming Out of Addictive Patterns Without Having to Go to Rehab. So if that sounds of interest to you, check out the links below. You can click on it and claim the super special deal that we have on it at the moment. Again, hope you and your family are doing okay, and would love for you to check out the rest of the videos on our channels and share them with anyone else that you think it might help. See you in the next video. Peace.